Okay, we're exactly on Tzadik Testament Aleph, right on top of the page. We learned the Mishnah yesterday, and Tzadik Testament base. We're holding Tzadik Testament Aleph. Thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. It's supposed to have a learning. We should have the base of Migdash immediately. Okay, learned in the Mishnah that there are certain people that they can't do the service in the temple, but nevertheless, they're allowed to eat from the sacrifices. For example, a child, he can't do the service, but he's allowed to eat. Then we learned that there's even people that can't do the service, but not only are they allowed to eat from the sacrifice, but they even get a portion of the sacrifice. A child, someone else can invite him. Parents can say, "Come eat part of my portion that I received." He doesn't get his own portion. When they divide it up into whichever kayanim are there, the child isn't counted as one of the people that are there to get a allotted portion. But then there are people that actually get a portion, and that would be balmum, someone with a blemish. Again, with a blemish, he can't do the service, but can still get a portion. So, what about someone that's tameh, he went to the mikveh, or maybe he didn't bring a sacrifice yet, and he can't eat? We said he doesn't get a portion. He doesn't get that portion. Okay. Doesn't get a portion, he doesn't get the hide either. The Gemara asks, Minahani Mili, where do we know that the portions of meat, of the portions of the sacrifice, are only given to a kohen that is doing the service, with those, besides for those exceptions? Amar Rish Lakish says, Damar Kra, we have a pasuk. Pasuk says regarding korban chatas. It says a kayin mechate yosei. The kayin mechate would mean that performs the service. The kayin that mechate means cleanses. The kayin that performs that service, he could eat it. Kayin mechate yoichal. Kayin mechate yoichal. The kayan that does the sprinkling of the blood, that does the cleansing, right? So he's the one that's able to eat. If he doesn't do the sprinkling of the blood, he can't eat. So the Gemara says, 1 second. The klalahu, is that the rule? That the only person that eats from the sacrifice is the one that's mechate, the one that sprinkles the blood? What about all the other kayanim that are there? Mishmar is the entire watch. Watch is a term that's used for the group of kayanim. It's called the mishmara. There's 24 mishmarais, 24 watches. For watches, it means groups of families of kayanim that have that week that they serve in the temple. They would get twice a year approximately, where they could serve in the temple, besides for the holidays. So whoever's part of that family gets a portion of and they're all eating. So what do you mean only the one that sprinkles the blood? The Gemara answers, Roya Lachita Kamrina. We don't mean the one that sprinkles the blood. We mean the one that's eligible to sprinkle the blood, he gets a portion. The Gemara asks, what about the child? He can't do the service. He's not eligible to do the service, and nevertheless he's still eating. What does it mean, eat? When the pasuk says, the kohen that sprinkles the blood, he's the one that eats. What does it mean, eats? It doesn't mean eats. It means yechalkena. It gets a portion, it's divided. So the kohen that's eligible to sprinkle the blood, he gets a portion. That doesn't mean eating. Even if he's not eligible, he could still eat. Just as if he's not eligible, which kohen is not eligible that eats? And which kohen not? So the katan, the child, he eats even though he doesn't get a portion. So that's where we're holding right now. That the pasuk is teaching me. If you want to get a portion of the meat, you have to be eligible to sprinkle the blood. It doesn't mean you have to actually sprinkle the blood. It means you have to be eligible. And it doesn't mean that eligible to sprinkle the blood means that you can eat. Eligible to sprinkle the blood means that you get a portion. Because the child is not eligible, but he still eats, but doesn't get a portion. Gemara says, 1 second, what about the balmum? We learned in the Mishnah that a kohen that has a blemish, we learned whether it's a blemish that's permanent or whether it's temporary. Whatever it is, he still gets a portion of the meat. He's not eligible to sprinkle the blood. Why does he get a portion? According to the way we're learning it now, the Gemara says, Bal Mum Rabye Rachmana. Rachmana Rabye. Bal Mum, the Eibishter, the merciful one, includes him with a special pasuk that a Bal Mum is going to be able to get a portion even though he can't do the service. It says, Kol Zachar Bakayanim, the Rabbe's Bal Mum. When it says all male, what's it coming to exclude with the all? It's coming to include, not exclude, to include. What's it coming to include? It's coming to include also a Bal Mum. Yeah? Question, Helen?
They would always go with the family, or what they would sometimes, like, depending just for the group, like, change.
No, they belong to a family. Families would make that criteria, unless it's a holiday when you can go even if it's not your family's time. So we gave an answer, we gave an explanation so far for the child and for the Bal Mum. The child eats but doesn't get a portion. The Bal Mum even gets a portion. And the source for that was a pasuk of Kol Zachar Bakayin. Ema, the Gemara asks, Kol Zachar l'Rabbeis Tvul Yaim. Let's say that you just gave an inclusion. To include the Bal Mum, because it says Kol Zachar, maybe it's coming to include someone that's tummy. Now, not really tummy, but someone that's tummy because he went to the mikveh and needs to wait for nightfall. Now, he's not that tummy. At night, not only would he be allowed to eat, he'd actually be allowed to serve. There's no service really at night except for bringing the fats up to the altar. But he's totally pure. He's a regular kayan. So the Gemara says, Mistabra Bal Mum Habalei L'Rabbi. The Bal Mum should be included and not the one that's tummy. Shekein Eichel. Because I know that the Bal Mum is allowed to eat. It's interesting because what we're learning here is that the Bal Mum gets a portion. Not that he can eat. We're asking, how do we know the Bal Mum gets a portion? He said, Kol Zachar Bakayin gets a portion. Now we're saying that maybe we should include instead of the Bal Mum getting a portion, maybe the Tvul Yaim should get a portion. He said no, because the Bal Mum is allowed to eat. That's why he gets a portion. The Tvul Yaim is not allowed to eat, so he's not going to get a portion. Yeah. So, the Gemara says, Adarabba, on the contrary, the Tvul Yaim should be included. Because in the evening, which is just in a few hours, not only is he going to be allowed to eat and get a portion, but he's even be allowed to serve. Because he's totally pure, the Tvul Yaim. He went to the mikveh, he has to wait for nightfall, right? The Gemara says, 1 second, Hashtami alei chazi, but right now he can't. Okay. So that was just a small question. How do we know we shouldn't be including this and not including that? We said this is more probable. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Rabbi Yosef says, Michti. Let's see. Ma yechlena. When the pasuk says, Kayan hamachati yoisa yechlena, the kayan that sprinkles the blood, he should be allowed to eat. We interpreted that to mean yechalkena. We interpret it to mean that he gets a portion. Doesn't mean to eat. It means he gets a portion, because we said, second, the whole everyone gets a portion. They said, yeah, we translate eligible. Doesn't mean the one that sprinkles eligible. So what about the child? The child's not eligible and he still eats. We said it doesn't mean to eat. It means gets a portion. So we adjusted it because of a child that yechlena means not to eat, but gets a portion to eat. So now we're saying, well, you just translated the word yechlena as yechalkena. That's a jump. It's not what it says. Lichter Rachmani Yachalkena. So why doesn't the Torah say gets a portion? If when it says eats, doesn't mean eat. It means gets a portion. Why didn't it say gets a portion? It says Mayechlena. Why did it say eats? It's coming to teach me that he has to be eligible to eat in order to get a portion. It uses the term eat to mean portion because it's telling me that you have to eat to get a portion. You have to be eligible to eat to get a portion. Who is that that's eligible to eat? That's the Balmum. Who's not eligible to eat? This is the Tful Yom. The one that went to the mikveh but has to wait for nightfall. Remember the first mission in Brachas, he has to wait to eat his truma. He has to wait to eat his karbanos until nightfall, right?
There's no such case that a person eats, that person gets a portion and doesn't eat.
Right. No one's getting a portion that's not eating. People are eating but not getting portions. Who? Child. Right. There's people that are getting portions but not serving. That's the Balmum. Yeah. Okay. Rish Lakish has a question. Based on what we've just learned, that a Balmum has a special dispensation, that he's going to get a portion even though he can't serve. So let's take a look like this. Balmum v'hutami. Let's say I have a Balmum, someone that has a blemish, a defect. We're on 99. Hey? Yeah. This Gemara has a. This is side A. It has a commentary on the side. So it divides it up for me. So
Yeah, because
yeah.
no, I see where you are.
So, Reish Lakish's question is like this: a kayan that's a balmum and tummy. You have to follow his logic. It's an interesting logic. Does Ma'oshi Yechalkalai? Should he also get a portion? Why should he get a portion? He's tummy. Well, even the lechazi, Rachmana Rabbi, he can't do the service, the balmum. But the Torah says he gets a portion anyway. So someone that's tamei also can't do the service. But so what? He couldn't do the service before either. And the Torah says that he gets a portion. He doesn't get worse when it comes to this. He never could do the service. The Torah says that he gets. So we're not worried about him doing the service, and he's getting the portion anyway. So let's say, Rachmana Rabbi, Leishna, there should be no difference. Mali tamei, mali balmum. What's the difference between tamei and balmum? He can't do the service, and he still gets a portion. So he should still get a portion if he's a balmum and tamei.
Excuse me, is this talking, the Tame can eat a portion?
No, tamei can't eat.
Right.
We're asking now if he should be able to get when it's divided up.
When it's can he get part of the leg when it's divided up, and then
No, he'll eat it tonight.
he can do what he wants with it, except eat it.
Okay, that's our question. Our question is, he should be able to get a portion, and either he'll eat it this evening, or he'll give it to his child or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
It seems like they're stretching it too far because the blemish one, like, he didn't get it any better than any cleanser than that. The whole yom, he isn't cleansed.
So what would the logic be? That the logic, what Hillel is suggesting, I think, is that a blemished kayan is stuck. So we have to help him out, like tzedakah. So we give him a portion. The poor guy is like he's crippled. So we give him the one that's tamei. Go to the mikveh and figure things out. Yeah, it's like, but we're viewing it like a welfare thing. That love that's not necessarily what's happening here. We didn't see that in this. Maybe that's what I meant. It doesn't define it that that's the way that it's being described.
Yeah, like each could do the best, but it's different different best.
Okay. Oidilma, there's another option. Other option is royal achila chelik, general achila ina chelik. One second. When it came to doing the service, we had a chiddush that the balmum, even though he can't do the service, even though he's not royal lechate, but nevertheless we have a special pasuk that includes him. It says kol zachar, that includes him to get a portion. So we thought maybe a balmum, also someone that's tamei, also can't do the service, but so what? But here he's a balmum that's done, and the balmum is a special inclusion. So he has like this card that he gets a portion. He pulls out. I get a portion even though I can't do the service card, and he pulls it out, and he gets his has a handicap parking. He pulls it out and he gets his portion. Or maybe it works like this: the balmum, even though he can't do the service, and he gets a portion, he's allowed to eat it. He's allowed to eat the portion. He's not tamei. Here, the balmum is tamei, and someone that's tamei can't eat it. So maybe the way that we're giving out the portions doesn't have to do with a dispensation for the service. Maybe it has to do with if you're allowed to eat it, then you can also get the portion. And so the balmum that's tamei, he can't eat it. He can't get his portion. So those are the two sides to this. Do we only look at the dispensation for lack of being eligible for the service, he still gets it? Or do we look at the fact that he can't eat it, so he shouldn't get it? Amar Rabba rather. Tashima, come and listen. Let's see a source for what's the main criteria for getting the portion. Kain Gadol Makravain, and Kain Gadol, you know that someone that's tamei, someone that's an Einen, can't do the service in the temple, except for a Kain Gadol. Regular Kain, if a close relative passes away, he's obligated to go to the funeral, he's obligated to leave the temple, he can't do the service. The Kain Gadol is different. Kain Gadol serves even if a close relative passes away. Makravain, he does the service. However, but he can't eat it. Ve'ina oichel, ve'ina chaylik. Usually he can take any portion that he wants, not now. Now he can't take a portion, he can't eat it. Ve'ina chaylik lechel erev, to eat it this evening when he's not a night anymore. He can't even take a portion for that.
Now, who was that you were referring to? The one who does the sacrifice?
So
Take whatever he wants, you said.
Kain Gadol, the Mishnah tells us in Yuma, is makriv chelik bareish, v'naitel chelik bareish. The Kain Gadol is like, he's the boss. He comes in, he does any sacrifice he wants, he takes any portion that he wants.
But normally, is there someone else who can take anything he wants?
No. I mean, only the Kain Gadol. Everyone else has to be allotted the portion. You know, what raffles, or they divide it up equally, or whatever it is. But the Kain Gadol could always get a portion. But over here, he's an Einen, he can't take a portion. This evening he won't be an Einen anymore. So what? Right now he's an Einen, he can't eat, he doesn't get a portion. Shema Mina, this tells me the only way, you see, he can even do the service. So he's totally eligible. He can do the service. He still can't get a portion because he can't eat it. Let's take it back to the question that we had. We have a kayan that's a balmum, that's also tamei. The service he can't do, but he gets a portion. But he can't eat it because he's tamei. So should he get a portion now when he's tamei? Say no. We learn from the kayan gadol that you have to be eligible to eat it in order to get a portion. So to the kayan balmum that can't eat it, can't get a portion. So that would be our answer. The kayan balmum tamei. Rish Lakish's question was, should he get a portion and eat it later? We learned from the Kain Gadol that he can't. Rabbi Shia has a question. Last question was Rish Lakish. Tamei b'karbanis tzibur. Ma'o she'echalkol. This is an interesting question. By a karban tzibur, we know that there's a special rule that if the congregation is impure, we still bring the sacrifice, even though everyone's impure. Like a karban pesach, if everyone's impure, we learned that they still bring it. Or other karbanos tzibur, they still bring it if he's impure. Now, here we're asking, let's say a kohen that's tamei, he wants to get a portion of the karban tzibur. Now, really, he's eligible to offer it up. We're not talking about that he's going to eat it. because eating it, even when everyone is tamei, they still bring the sacrifice, but they don't eat it. So we're talking about bringing the sacrifice. So he's eligible to bring the sacrifice. So maybe he should also get a portion. Based on the last answer, we would say no, but let's take a look. Do we say that someone that does the service that the Eibishter says gets a portion behind Ami Mechatio? He's also eligible to do the service. Or maybe he has to be eligible to eat in order to get a portion. He's not eligible to eat because he's tamei. He do the service, but he can't eat. That's the rule by a carbon tzibur. Amar Ravina, so here Ravina gives us a teretz. Tashma kayin gadol makar vaynan veina oichel veina chelak lechel erev. Exactly the same brisa that we brought before, that a kayin gadol, that's an einan, is able to do the service, but he doesn't get a portion to be able to eat it this evening. Shma mina rei lechil binan. Shma mina, we see same answer that we gave before. They need to be eligible to eat it in order to get a portion. And here, the kayin that's tamei by the carbon tzibur, he is eligible to do the service, but not eligible to eat, doesn't get a portion. Okay, we gave 2 questions. We gave one answer to both of them. Einan nageya veina makar. We learned in the Mishnah that an einan is allowed to touch the meat, but he's not allowed to offer the service. We're talking about not a kayin gadol einan. We're talking about a regular kayin. A regular kayin, that's an einan. Einan is the first day that the relative passed away. Before the funeral, he's considered an einan midaraisa. Yeah. So he can't do service, but if he touches it, it's not a problem. The Gemara asks, einan nageya? An einan is allowed to touch the sacrificial meat, as he can walk around with stuff and touch the food. There's a contradiction to this. The Mishnah in Chagiga says, einan and mechusar kippurim tzrichen tefillah lakedesh. An einan and the Mechusar Kippurim, someone that didn't bring his sacrifices yet, in order for them even to touch sacrificial meat, they have to go to the mikveh. Now you're telling me that he's allowed to touch it. I also said, but what's second? He didn't go to the mikveh. Or at least he didn't mention that he went to the mikveh. Amar Rabami, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Kasha. It's not a question. Rabami says the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Khan, over here, we're talking about that he's allowed to touch it. B'shetaval, he went to the mikveh. Kan b'shalei taval. There in the Mishnah in Chagiga, where it says that he can't touch the meat, he didn't go to the mikveh. The Gemara asks, "V'chitabel ma'havi ajrei aninus." What do you mean he went to the mikveh? Every moment when he pops his head out of the mikveh, he immediately is an einan again and needs to go back down. How does he? The aninus doesn't go off until the funeral or until the next day. So what do you mean he goes to the mikveh? He's still an einan. Ajrei aninus. The Amar Rabba Baruhuna, einan shetavel aninus chayzeres alav. The aninus comes back if it's in the first day, even if he goes to the mikveh. Right? It's like taivel b'sheretz biyate. It was an example of someone repenting but still doing the sin again. It says you're going to the mikveh, but you're still holding on to the dangling, sheretz. You're still holding it, so it doesn't help. Yeah.
So what's the purpose of going to the mikveh?
What's the purpose? Right? It's not going to help. This is like kasha. We're going to do a different answer. Dasach daite. Delay asach daite. Really, it has to do with where you misiach das. You see, what happens is, when you wash your hands to eat bread, it's an example of the kayanim that had to wash their hands before they ate truma. We continue it. That's really the rule by truma, is that you have to wash your hands for truma. We do it just to keep that memory. But we say don't talk. Right? Don't talk until you. Why don't talk? Because if you talk, you may get distracted and your hands may touch something and then you'll be distracted. So the Kayanim had to make sure that they weren't distracted. They shouldn't touch anything that possibly could make them tummy. We're saying now is that normally a Einan is very distracted. There's a lot of things on his head. Someone just passed away. Maybe he might end up touching something. So we said there was a difference between an Einan that was Mesiach Das, that he let his mind wander, and then he doesn't know what he touched. So an Einan that was concentrating the whole time. So our Mishnah that says that he's allowed to touch kachim is talking about where he wasn't mesiach das. His mind was he was concentrated. If we say savri maranan, right? Pay attention. Savri maranan, concentrate. So the Gemara says, okay, so we're talking about the Mishnah over there says that he's hesach hadas. He had hesach hadas, and that's why he can't touch kaidash. The Gemara says he's hesach das. So you have to wait till evening. Shlishi shvi boy. Maybe he touched a corpse. If he was mesiach das, how do you know? You'd have to wait 3. You have to wait 3 and 7 days. The 3 days for the first sprinkling, and then the 7th day for then it's on the 3rd and 7th day. This is much more serious. Damarab Yustai Bar Masan. That's a new one, right? Rabbi Yechanan, apparently is a student of Rabbi Yechanan. Do they have an English name for him? Justy.
What a why?
It's the original Justinian. They don't have it there. Okay. So Rabbi Yisrael Bar Masan says in Rabbi Yechanan has chadas shichazar b'shlishi shvi. We have a statement in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that you have to get the paraduma water sprinkled on you, not the way we were saying it. If it's that severe that it was heschadas. The Gemara says like kasha. Don't worry, that's not a problem because when Rabbi Yechanan said that when Rabbi Yustai Bar Masan said name Rabbi Yechanan that he needed a sprinkling of the paraduma, that's dasach das mitmei meis. That's when he was mesiach das from touching the corpse, which that's very possible, especially if he's an einan. Maybe he touched the corpse, so that's why you would need it. But the Mishnah that in Chagiga that says that you just need the mikvah, that's dasach das mitmei sheretz. That was a different type of eschadas. You forgot about right? He wasn't careful about not touching a sheretz. Tell me what to do here. It says, participant has asked you to start an AI companion. Is that good? Is that good or not good? Should I attempt? I never did this before. I said start. Let's see what happens. Okay.
Is that going to be like an assistant?
I have no idea. Okay, let's see. Okay. Huh?
So I've been trying to do insurance and stuff. They put you through the AI first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they to see who to talk to?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I was saying, maybe like create an AI of myself.
Uh-huh.
Like to deal with all the other AIs. And then after that, like they just learn and do.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And someone was telling me that the AI is like it has it's an artificial personality,
Yeah.
but it's very childish. And it will intentionally lie to you if you're rude to it, and it has like this immature thing, which is very possible. So
Who wants to be your best friend?
this shliach that we bring them Yitzchak Kislev, Shlomi Chaim. He said a professor in the university that he is, I forget where, Santa Cruz, was telling him that there's a problem that AI could rebel against the master. So what they want to do is they want to keep all the AIs separated. The languages so the one that does images doesn't communicate with the one that does the audio, the one that does the text. So you have to keep them separate. Just like by the Dara Flaga, that they were going to to rebel against God. So God said, okay, we'll separate the languages so that. And that was his mashal. But okay, so we're learning now that there's 2 types of heschadas. There's heschadas from Tmei Meis, which that's much more severe. There's heschadas from Tamei Sheretz. So the way we're going to resolve the contradiction over here, where Rabbi Yechanan says heschadas, you're going to need to wait 7 days, and then the Mishnah that says that we're translating to mean heschadas, that you only have to go to the mikveh, is because heschadas for what? Heschadas for sheretz or heschadas for the mikveh? Gemara now says, Tmei Sheretz, Tamei Malyu, Erev Shemesh Bay. 1 second. You're saying that the Mishnah over there in Chagiga was talking about Hes Chadas for touching a sheretz, a creeping creature. That's not going to just help you. You're not going to just need the mikveh. You're going to have to wait for evening. So, and avoid another issue is I feel the Chumanami. Why does the Mishnah over there say that Oinen Mechusar Kippurim Trichin Tvila L'Kodesh? It says they have to go to the mikveh to touch a sacrifice. They don't just need to go to the mikveh. They have to wait for evening. And why does it say a sacrifice? It would apply to truma as well, right? We just messed up the answer for two reasons. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah says, "Ba'Imer." We're talking about the Mishnah in Chagig is talking about where the Einan says, "Nishmarti midavar amatameni." I was very careful not to touch anything that would make me impure. Nishmarti midavar apaisleni. But I wasn't careful that something that would make me invalid. The term impure, tameh, versus pasul, is like a code word for two types of tumah. Impure means that you're so tameh that you can make something else tameh, and pasul means that you're only tameh enough that you become tameh, but you can't pass it on to anything else. You can contract tumah, but you can't. You can get it, but you can't. But you're not contagious.
Like wet cloth.
Like the tefeach hamanaslat, like the cloth. Yeah. Okay, so but what this means is relevant to us is that if you're pasul, then you only need to go to the mikveh, and you don't need to wait for evening. If you're tameh, then you need to go to the mikveh and wait for evening. So the person says, I know exactly how he's concentrating that he doesn't become tameh from something that's going to give him a tumah, but I wasn't careful with something that's going to give me just a pasul, a different level of tumah. Shot would be, well, what do you mean different level of tumah? Shot would be that a truma and kachim have different levels of impurity. In other words, when something is a rishon l'tama, okay, it can make a person tummy. An avatama can make a person tummy. Vladatama can only make food tummy. And then that food can make someone else can make another other food tummy. If it touches that food, if it's wet. So, and then that could go to a third level by truma, and a fourth level by kachim. So there are different levels here. So probably what he's doing is he's saying, I wasn't careful with that fourth level. From the third coming to the fourth, I wasn't careful with that fourth level. So therefore, I don't have a problem for truma. I only have a problem for kachim, for sacrifices, and it's only a problem for mikvah. It's not a problem for evening. So there's a certain level. Gemara says, this is such a concept where a person is careful for this, but he's not careful for that. He watched himself only for halfway. Gemara says yes, it's possible. But Tanya taught in a brisa. What's Rabbi Dr. Twersky, his book, Generation to Generation, the first book that he. So in there he talks about when he was in medical school. So they had to do something where they had to put on gloves and anything that can't contaminate something. I forget exactly what it was. But he said for him it wasn't a problem because on Hanukkah they would prepare the fat of the geese for Pesach. So in the middle of everything, they would spread out a Pesach take a tablecloth. They would clear everything away. And they had to make sure that they didn't touch anything. He says he was used to preparing food for Pesach, and you're careful not to touch this. Everyone knew they walk through the house like holding your hands up like this, not to touch anything. So is there a concept of netirusa lepalga? Can you watch yourself only halfway? I'm careful not to touch this, but I'm still touching that. Is there such a thing? The Gemara says yes. Does a deo sal reishi? Talking about someone has a basket of figs on his head. My greifa b'seichai. My greifa is like a hatchet, some sort of sharp tool, a shovel that's inside there that was used to separate the figs because the figs would dry together. You would need a shovel. Omar, and he says, Libi al asal. I'm being very careful that the basket, doesn't become tummy. But I'm not careful that the shovel doesn't become tummy. So the rule is, saltar magrefa tmeya. See, we see that it's possible to guard for halfway. So the Gemara asks, but right away, but tami magrefa l'sal. So why doesn't the magrefa make the sal? Why doesn't the shovel make the basket tummy? My answer is ain't kli matame keli. But one keli can't make another keli tummy because a keli can only become tummy from an avatuma. And so once this becomes tummy, this becomes a vlada tummy. It becomes a rishon. Rishon can't make and you need to have an original make a keli tummy, not a secondary. Yeah. Gemara asks, is it tummy masha b'seichebo? Let it make the figs tummy. The figs could become tummy from a keli. Amarava, the Rava says, "V'oimer shemartia midavar amatama, v'loi shemartia midavar apaisla." Here's really what we're saying. Here's like an even stronger answer. See that the person can say that I was careful that it shouldn't become tamei from something that will give it the ability to make something else tamei. But I wasn't careful that it shouldn't become tamei, that it shouldn't become puzzle. See that things could go. You could have a guarding for partially. Igalgal milsa. This matter rolled around. That means like it went around the sages. Umati lakamei de Rababa bar Mamal. Oh, we didn't have Rababa bar Mamal in a while. Came to Rababa bar Mamal. Amrulei. So Rababa bar Mamal says, Leishmiya lehu adam Rabbi Yechanan Amar Rebbe. The sages that discuss this, they don't know what Rabbi Yechanan said in the name of Rebbe. It says, Ha'eichal shlishi kel truma. If a person eats a shlishi, a third level of impurity of truma, which truma could reach a third level of impurity. Asr lechal, he's not allowed to eat. If a person eats it, he digests. He ingests impure food that actually contaminates him, invalidates him from himself going and eating. However, mutaliga, but he's allowed to touch. We have our answer. So Alma ba'achila v'rabbanan maila. That means that the sages only forbade eating when it gili rabbanan maila, but when it came to touching, they didn't forbid that. If a person ingests food that's a tamei shlishi, he's not allowed to eat other truma. So we can answer the same thing back to our original question. We had a problem with an einen. An einen, we said, wasn't allowed to eat, in the Mishnah Chagiga, he wasn't allowed to eat Kodesh. Now we're saying he's allowed to touch Kodesh. So if we consider him Tameh, why is he allowed to touch it? My answer is it's simple. Because when it came to eating, the sages were more strict. But touching, it's not a problem. He answered the whole question. Oh. Maybe you're the AI companion.
Yeah, I don't know why you're saying AI. Couldn't shut it off.
We learned that who's not allowed to get a portion for later. We said an Einan can't get a portion for later. He can touch, he can't get a portion for later. Okay. Miflag Hudalei Palik, the Gemara says. This is a rather long Gemara. We'll have to stop in the middle and you'll see it's going to take us like two pages to go through this topic. Discusses Einan and Miflag Hudalei Palik. He can't get a portion. But he's allowed to eat. This is a problem. He didn't say that clearly in the Mishnah. He said, is Negeya, Eni Makriv, It missed the main detail there. It didn't tell us about him eating. It says he doesn't get a portion to eat. Maybe we know from the psukim that he can't. So anyway, the Gemara right away jumps into the question. It says, "V'ramini," there's a contradiction. Einen tayvel v'eichlas pischi le'erev avaloi bekadshim. And excuse me, an einen can go to the mikveh and eat his korban pesach. Okay, but he can't eat other kachim. Even that evening. There's a biblical einin and then there's a rabbinic einin. Biblical einin is on the day. The rabbinic einin continues to the evening. So what are we saying that he's allowed to, if someone invites him to eat, he's allowed to eat? He said, we know he's not allowed to eat. It's a special dispensation that we have for the korban pesach that we allow him to eat in the evening. The sages relax the aninus for the korban pesach. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah midifti like kasha kam b'pesach kam b'shayim eisashana. When do we say that a kayan that an einin is allowed to eat? That is by a korban pesach, but the rest of the year he's not allowed. Pesach pesach al nami kachim. Once it's a korban pesach, once he's allowed to eat a korban pesach, we allow him to eat other kachim as well. Shayim eisashana leichazi. But the rest of the year he's not eligible to eat anything. We can't eat the korban pesach. Can't eat anything else. My avalei bekachim. So what did the Mishnah mean that he eats eichelas pischei le'erev avalei bekachim? We just said that if he can eat his korban pesach, he's allowed to. He is allowed to eat kachim. It says avalei bekachim shel kol hashanim, but we're talking about he can't eat kachim the rest of the year. Okay. Well, what did we explain here? We said that he doesn't get a portion, but he would be allowed to eat. What would he be allowed to eat? He would be allowed to eat the korban pesach and be allowed to eat other sacrifices that night, other sacrifices, but not the rest of the year. Ravasi says that he gives a different answer. We said by us that he's allowed to eat. We said over there that he's not allowed to eat. Like kasha kan shemesh meis ba'arba v'kavri barba asar v'kavri barba asar. The Mishnah that says that he's allowed to eat the korban pesach but not anything else was talking about where the burial was on the 14th. Because the death and the burial were on the 14th. So therefore, the rabbinic aninus continues to the evening, and so he's not allowed to have other sacrifices. But in our Mishnah where it says that he's allowed to eat, he just doesn't get it a portion. The person died on the relative died on the 13th. If a kavri barbas and he was buried on the 14th. When do we say that the night has a rabbinic aninus? That's only if that's the day of the death. But the aninus continues until the burial, rabbinically, until the burial. Biblically, it's only the day of the passing. It continues till the burial rabbinically, but it doesn't continue to the night of the day of the burial if it's not the same day as the death. So therefore, when by us we're saying that it doesn't continue into the night. That's why he would be allowed to eat if someone would invite him. Mantana, who's the opinion that holds Aninas Laila Midirabanan, that the Aninas that night is rabbinic? That's Reb Shimoni. That's the opinion of Reb Shimon, which is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Detanya. So in a Braisa, Aninas Laila Midivrei Torah, the Braisa says the first opinion is that the Aninas of the evening, the acute morning. How do they translate Aninas? They just put Aninas in italics, right? Aninas of the night is biblical. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Shimon Aimer, Einen Einai Midivrei. What's the expression here? Einen Einai Midivrei Torah Midivrei Sefer. An einen, referring to at night, is only It's not biblical, it's only rabbinic. Now, Teida, I'll prove it to you. The fact that we know that an Einan is allowed to eat a carbon Pesach proves it to me that it's rabbinic and not biblical. There's a bit of a long brisa here that's going to take us through. Let's leave it over here. Maybe we'll start over from Montana. Okay. Okay, let's leave it over here. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.